Hey everybody, welcome back to Funny Bug Bees and Woodworks. I'm Clifton Murphy, I'm the owner. Today's video is a quick how-to on how to build single-screened inner hive covers. These help with ventilation, great product, super easy to make. Stick with us, I'll show you how to do it step by step using nothing but a table saw and maybe some shears to cut the hardware cloth. For all you guys and gals out there in YouTube land that can't make these yourselves, or you've decided that you don't want to, it's just easier to buy them, take a look at funnybugbees.com. We've got a coupon code later on in this video that'll give you 10% off this product in our shopping cart. We have $150 free shipping, so any order over $150 ships for free, and we give 3% cash back on all orders via a reward system. Funny Bucks, we call them. Let's get to the video. Hey, just a disclaimer everyone, it should go without saying, but please use your PPE, personal protective equipment, including a push block, push stick, hearing protection, eye protection, and gloves when necessary. I don't recommend wearing gloves while actually cutting, but for lifting your lumber, you will use those. And as always, the blade guard has been removed in this video simply for visual clarity. I do have a rivening knife on this saw, but the blade guard is actually removed for visual clarity. You should always use yours. Hey guys, so the first thing we're going to need to do is go over a cut list. I'm going to quickly show you the exact dimensions for the lumber you need to pre-cut so that we can put this project together, and I'll actually show you me cutting that lumber as well, how you're going to need to do it. There's very few specialized cuts in this. As a matter of fact, there's only a simple dado cut in 2 of the pieces of wood. Everything else is very straightforward, and we'll show you how to do that. Alright everybody, so the first thing we're going to need is actually a 1/8, and this is 3/4 inch stock. If you don't have 3/4 inch stock, you'll need to cut yours down, because this video is going to explain how to do this using 3/4 inch stock, and how to get this surface to 3/4 inch is the topic of a separate video. This is just a piece of scrap that I'm going to use for the first 4 pieces that we need, and the reason is that the pieces are 1/8 inch thick, which is what we're going to cut off this. So 1/8 inch strips, 1/8 inch wide, 3/4 by 1/8 inch. We need 2 pieces that are 19 7/8 inches long, and 2 pieces that are 12 1/4 inches long. And the reason I'm showing you this is because it's easiest to make the strips. What you don't want to do is actually set your fence to 1/8 inch and try to cut off between the fence and your blade 1/8 inch. That's a dangerous cut, extremely difficult to do. So the easier way is to set your fence to a known size. For instance, 3 inches. If you've got a piece of 3 1/4 wide stock or so, set your fence to 3 inches and then cut your lumber to start with that wide. And then all you need to do is move your fence towards the blade 1/8 inch plus the width of your blade. In my case, that's 1/8 inch as well. So to get 1/8 inch strips off of this safely, I'm going to cut it at 3 inches just so I know where to start at, and then I'm going to move my fence over 1/4 inch at a time, and what that'll do is give me 1/8 inch wide strips out of this piece of lumber. So I'll show you how to do that right now. I've cut this exactly 3 inches, you can see that. So now what I'll do is I'll move my fence over 1/4 inch at a time, which is going to give me 1/8 inch wide strips off of this. As you can see, that's giving me a strip. Hopefully you can see that. That's exactly 1/8 inch wide. And just keep repeating that until you have 4 of these strips that are at least 20 inches long, and then we'll cut them to length in just a second. So what we have is 4 strips that are 1/8 inch thick. They're all the same. And they're 20 inches long. I'm going to finish them to final dimensions in a moment. We need 2 of them cut to 19 7/8 and 2 of them cut to 12 1/4. Let's make that cut now. All right, so what I need is I need 2 of these pieces cut 19 7/8 and the other 2 cut 12 1/4. Two pieces 12 1/4, 2 pieces 19 7/8 by 1/8 of an inch thick by 3/4 of an inch wide. All right, that takes care of those really minute cuts. The next thing we're going to need is 2 pieces of lumber, a 1/2 inch by 19 inches by 3/4 of an inch. So we'll cut that now. 2 pieces 19 inches long by 1/2 by 3/4. Let's get it cut. Alright, so we've got 2 pieces that have been cut 1/2 inch thick. It's already 3/4 inch stock, so we didn't have to do any work there. And they need to be 19 inches long, so let's get that cut done. Fence set to 19 inches, cut these to length. Alright, so the last thing we're going to need is a piece of lumber that's 7/8 of an inch by 3/4 of an inch by 13 3/4 of an inch. So we'll get that set up, we'll cut it now. And remember, all the dimensions will be in the video description below, so if you have any problems, just refer back to it. Alright, so we need 2 pieces, 7/8 of an inch wide, cut off of this stock. It's already 3/4 of an inch thick, and then we'll cut it to length. Alright, we've cut 2 pieces of stock that are 7/8 of an inch wide by 3/4 of an inch, and we need to cut these to 13 3/4 of an inches long. Alright, let's move to the next step. Alright, so the only kind of advanced cut, and we're just going to call that, for lack of a better term, it's not really advanced, is we need, in the pieces that we cut 7/8 by 3/4, 13 3/4 inches long, we need to cut a dado in both ends. And I guess technically it would be a rabbit, but regardless, we need to cut a 1/4 inch deep by 3/4 inch wide dado joint out of this piece of lumber. Now, so that you guys who don't have dado blades or dado stacks can see how to do this with just a table saw with a standard blade, I'm going to show you that. So what we want to do first is set the depth of our blade, and remember, before adjusting your blade, please unplug your saw, and I'll do that before we adjust it. So we want to set the depth of this blade to 1/4 of an inch, and we'll do that now. So let's get our saw unplugged and we'll do it. Alright, so remember to move your blade back and forth like this to find the high spot of the tine, the tooth on your blade, and that's what needs to be set to 1/4 of an inch. So you've got to move it back and forth a little bit to find the exact center of that blade to set your saw. Don't check it all the way up here at the front of the blade or all the way back here at the back, because you're definitely going to be off. And you'll also notice on your saw blades, they typically alternate the teeth pattern, so it's high side left, high side right, high side left, high side right as you go around the blade. So get one that's got a high side on the side you're measuring, and move that back and forth until you get it at its high point, and set your blade at a quarter of an inch at that point. And I've got that set. So now that you've got the blade set to a quarter of an inch high, you can plug your saw back in, and then we'll move to the next part. Now you're going to take your fence, your miter fence, okay? These were 13 3/4 inches long. So for me, I've got 0 on my miter fence set to the left side of my blade, and you probably do too. That's how you would normally set this up. So to get a cut that's 3/4 of an inch back from the end, which is what we want, we just need to subtract 3/4 from 13 3/4, and that's where we set our miter's fence at. So 13 3/4 minus 3/4 is of course 13. That's where we're going to set it. Now this pass that you want to make, okay, the part that you want to cut out is across the 7/8 face. This is wider this way than this way, so the wide part you want down. You don't want the wide part up. Or excuse me, you don't want the wide part left to right. You want the wide part top and bottom, not left and right. So put your wide part top and bottom, so set a wide edge on your table saw surface, and then make your pass. This is what you'll end up with. Nothing else to do right now yet. So take that part you just cut and flip the wood around and do it on the other two ends as well. As you can see, I've made that first cut on both ends. Now all I'm going to do is get rid of this adjuster, or this guide, and the fence stop, I guess. And now all I'm going to do is actually make passes through the blade on each one of these to clear out from the cut I made all the way back to the end. So from here all the way back to the end. Alright, so what you end up with should look like this. It's a quarter of an inch deep and 3/4 of an inch long. Alright, that's all the lumber that we need to cut, and what I did want to show you guys is how this sets up. You see, this is the 7/8 piece that we cut the dado in the end. So what you're going to do is you're going to take the pieces that were a 1/2 inch thick by 3/4, and you're going to set them down with the 3/4 inch face on your table, not the 1/2 inch face, the 3/4 inch face on the table. And then that dado that we cut is going to form a channel that you're going to connect these two. And you'll see how there's a space left here. This piece is taller than this piece. That's what allows the ventilation for your hive to come in. If this were flush all the way around, of course your box would sit on it, or your lid actually would sit on it, and there would be no way to get ventilation in and out. So what we're going to do now is we're going to take some wood glue, and we're going to apply it to this corner, and then I'm going to use 18 gauge 1 inch long crown staples with a 1/4 inch crown, and I'm going to staple those as well as glue them. These small pieces that we cut are actually going to provide some more rigidity, and I'll show you how to do that in a second. So this thing's actually pretty stable once it goes together, and we'll show you how to do that. So for now, let's go ahead and get our stapler out and our glue and get this built. All right, so a little dab of glue on your 7/8 inch wide piece. You don't need glue in this whole face because only half of it's going to be covered with wood. The rest of the glue on the end of our 1/2 inch wide piece. And we're just going to set that flat on the table. And push it in tight. Take your stapler, however works best for you. You just want to make sure this is flush on the bottom edge. So this should be flush. Let me just get mine flush. And we're going to throw a staple in it. Now we're going to do that again for the other side of your 7/8 inch piece with the tongue, or not the tongue and groove, the dado cut in it. Get that nice and smeared in there. Put the extra and more if you need it on your 1/2 inch wide piece. Don't worry about glue coming out everywhere. We can clean it up later. We just want to make sure that this bottom surface, there you go. Just want to make sure that this bottom surface is flush, because that's where it's going to sit on your hive. So this is what you should have so far. I'll get you guys a close-up of it. There we go. All right, so that's what you should have so far. All right, let's go ahead and add the other 7/8 inch wide piece to the other end. Refocus for you guys. All right, so once you've got that far, take your other 7/8 inch wide piece that you cut the dado in. We're going to apply glue to it. And then that, of course, goes on the opposite end. I'm going to set it up. I just basically set it on the table to get everything nice and flush on this back side, which is really what you're looking for, because the more flush, flat you can get this, the better it's going to seal your hive, and there's nothing wrong with that. So, staple that. Do the same thing to the other corner. Make sure that it's nice and flat and flush on this bottom edge, okay? And give it a staple. We've got our frame completed. All right, now you're probably wondering what to do with these strips, and I'm going to show you what to do with those, but the next thing that we have to do is cut a piece of hardware cloth to fit this. This frame is 13 3/4 wide and 19 7/8 inches long. I'm not going to bore you with actually cutting hardware cloth, so I'm going to cut a piece of that real quick, and then I'll show you how to use these strips to connect it to your frame. Alright, so what I've done here is I've cut a piece of hardware cloth, the dimensions of this frame, which this is an 8 frame inner hive cover, so it's 13 3/4 by 19 7/8. This happens to be stainless steel number 8 cloth, which is what you want to use. You definitely don't want to use number 6 or number 7 because the holes are too large and beetles will get through, which is why we use those cloths for beetle traps and this cloth for ventilation screens and ventilation holes, etc., that we might put in our boxes. So the next step is going to be to use these thin pieces we cut earlier in the video to attach the screen to the frame. And we'll go ahead and get that done now for you. Alright, so your next step, after you've cut your hardware cloth, is to take these 1/8 inch slices that you took off your lumber at the very beginning. You're going to line up your wire cloth on the frame. Start with the long piece and line it up with the long edge. Just make sure it's flush on the outside and flush to the back. I'm calling this the back and this the outside. So make sure that's flush. Once you have it flush, take you a staple and put in it. I'm using pneumatic stapler, but these are T50 staples. You can use whatever you have. Just remember this is stapling into a piece of stock that's a 1/2 inch thick, so you don't want to use anything overly long. And just go down the whole edge, applying your staples. And keeping that outside edge flush. Repeat that. For the short side. And what you want to do is when you put in this short piece is take the cloth that you haven't stapled yet and with your thumb just pull it tight. And then once you have it pulled tight, you can apply some pressure with your finger to this particular piece and then staple it. And once you have that stapled, just keep pulling it tight as you go down and hold pressure to your piece of wood. That's what we have so far. Now, take your other long piece, line it up, and put you a staple here at the bottom. Then what I like to do then is pull from the top away from where you've stapled already, so this screen is nice and tight. So I'm going to pull this direction, which is away from the pieces that we've already attached. And then just add your staples. That's 3 sides. Now just add your 4th and final piece of lumber. If a staple does not attach proper or does not go through, just grab you a small craft hammer and tap it down. That'll go nice and flat. So this is what we've ended up with. As you can see, let me get a close up here for you with some. As you can see, this is a flat screen that sits on top of your hive like this. Now when you put your inner cover on top of this, what it does is it raises your inner cover up that distance above this piece, which allows air to flow through and across here. And since it's screened, heat from inside the hive can exit and flow out. Single screened inner hive cover, really simple project, easy to do. You guys can do it.